After a vision that came true before the eyes of the world, Miriam received a second call from Jesus. This time, he was shown a secret never revealed before about the church and the man who will soon lead millions of believers. Miriam is risking her life by sharing this testimony. But we have to tell the truth, even when it shakes us. As always, it is fair to warn everyone, both believers and non-believers. Now, listen carefully to your vision because it is really happening. Before starting, subscribe to the channel and write amen in the comments to help us share messages like this every day. Now open your heart and listen. My name is Miriam, and I never asked to see what I saw, nor did I seek the fame that briefly touched me like an impetuous wind. My life was simple, marked by ordinary days, until one night, I was horrified before it happened. I saw a hurricane of unprecedented proportions. I saw deserted houses, terrified faces, water and fire mixing in the chaos, and a city, New Orleans, bending under the fury of something that seemed more like a punishment than a meteorological event. When I told that vision, I did it with the tremor of someone who does not know where the voice that speaks inside him comes from, but with the certainty that it was not the product of my mind. Few believed me, some made fun of me, others avoided me. Then, 2 months later, everything happened. The images I had seen were manifested one by one in the news, and those who had heard me in silence were looking for me trembling. From that day on, labels were assigned to me that did not feel like mine. Prophetess, visionary, miracle receiver. But I was just a woman surprised by the truth. And since then, every night I waited for a new signal. I prayed, I fasted, I wrote pages and pages for the heavens. But the silence enveloped me like a thick fog. No new vision, no voice, just the memory of something too big to forget. Years passed, years of spiritual loneliness in which I even doubted myself, asking myself if everything had been a coincidence, a fortunate dream, a divine coincidence. However, in my heart I knew that what I saw was not an illusion. It was a call, a wound that was still burning. Then something strange happened one day like any other. When I had just left the shower, the temperature change was abrupt. I felt that my heart was accelerating, a sudden dizziness, and before I could grab anything, everything turned black. I remember the exact feeling. It was not a simple fainting. It was as if I had been absorbed elsewhere. And it was not like the previous time. The first vision was shown to me from afar like a sacred film. This time it was different. When I opened my eyes, I immediately felt that I was not on earth. The air was heavy. The silence was evident and a deep chill ran through my bones. Although I no longer had a body, I understood that I was entering a place that did not belong to the light. My heart, or whatever was left of it in that state, was beating with fear. However, I knew that I was there for a reason. An invisible superior force was leading me to see. And what I was about to discover would forever change my way of seeing the church, the world, and the time we have left. I don't know how long it's been since I lost consciousness in my bathroom until I opened my eyes to a landscape that no human mind should ever contemplate. There was no light tunnel, no sweetness, no angels. On the contrary, I was enveloped in an oppressive atmosphere made of shapesless shadows that moved, of faceless laments. Sounds of metal sheets tearing, merging with screams that seemed to come from all directions. The smell of sulfur and rot was everywhere. And however, I did not breathe as I do on this earth. It was as if I perceived everything with the soul and no longer with the senses of the body. I felt that I was not in my body, but I was fully conscious, lucid, as if everything I was experiencing was 1,000 times more real than everyday reality. I understood without the need for anyone to tell me that I was in hell. Not in a figurative sense, not in a symbolic dream, but truly in the dimension where love has been banished and where light is just a lost echo. The most shocking thing was not the suffering that surrounded me, but the absolute awareness that each soul there knew exactly why it had been condemned. No one asked for mercy. No one justified themselves. Everyone was naked before the eternal truth. They had chosen to live for themselves against the voice of love and against the truth of God. I walked, or rather, I was pushed, dragged by a force that did not speak to me, but led me to visions that were reserved for me. And the more I advanced, the more I recognized figures. It was not a hell populated by strangers, but by familiar faces. I saw politicians of great fame, men whom we still see smiling on television, shaking hands and making promises, but whose hearts are rotten by ambition, lies, and blood. I saw them bent, reduced to deformed beings, torn by chains that they themselves had forged with the decisions they made in life. I saw religious figures, names that I had ever heard pronounced with respect, admiration, almost worship. Some of them, and this was the detail that struck me, were still alive on earth. I saw their souls already prepared for that place, as if time did not exist, as if the judgment had already been pronounced. Because God does not look at appearances, but reads the heart. Some were bishops, other preachers, other simple priests, but all with the same sentence. They had used the name of God to erect thrones to sit on, while the true king was put aside. Among the most terrible visions, there was one that still wakes me up at night with my heart in my throat. I saw a man dressed in dark red, a cardinal. Not just any cardinal, but one that would soon become something much bigger. He was surrounded by figures greeting him, but his gaze was cold, his soul as if it were surrounded by black smoke. No one saw him as he was, but I did. And inside me, the voice of the Spirit whispered that very soon I would understand everything. I felt that that cardinal had already prepared his place, although his name was still on the lips of the faithful, as if he were a saint. As I was guided more and more deeply, I realized that what I was experiencing was not just a vision, but a mission. I had to see. I had to understand. And one day I would have to speak, even if the price was high. The hell I was seeing was not just a place. It was also a mirror of the world that we are building day after day. And it was just the beginning. Suddenly, as if driven by an invisible current, I was torn from those infernal visions and transported to a place that at first glance seemed to be exactly the opposite of the dark kingdom that I had just crossed. I found myself in the Sistine Chapel, but not as a tourist or a pilgrim, but as a spirit present but invisible, as if it were a shadow floating between the walls, decorated by the greatest artists of the faith. Before me was developing a moment that would turn the world around in a few hours. The conclave had ended. The new pontiff was about to be announced. The silence was full of anticipation, but there was something else below, a deep vibration that did not emanate from God. The cardinals were gathered in a circle. Some had a low gaze, others remained impassive, while others moved restless, as if they felt that what was about to develop was not completely aligned with the plan they had imagined when they promised to follow the Holy Spirit. Then it happened. In the center of the scene appeared a cardinal who had seen before, although in a different place, a place of darkness. Now he was dressed in white, newly crowned and with the scepter placed on his head. His face transmitted serenity, but his eyes, those eyes, carried something that did not belong to heaven. A subtle smile, barely perceptible, was drawn on his face. This smile was not of humility or joy. No, it was more of a silent victory. When he spoke, his words fell like a blow. At first they seemed pleasant, but deep down they had the strength necessary to topple centuries of faith. He spoke of reform, but not in the purifying sense. No, this was a total transformation. He preached about a new church for a new world, using terms such as inclusion, progress, and universal welcome. But under these sweet expressions there was a truth that struck like a punch. His goal was to change the very heart of the doctrine. He spoke of accepting all identity, but not for love, rather abolishing the very concept of sin. He spoke of abortion as a modern compassion. He declared that it was time to review the concept of family, which could no longer be rigid. He proclaimed that the truth had to be doubled to culture, and that the church should no longer seek to convert, but simply welcome it. And in a more chilling way, he declared that the waiting time was over. It was time to move on to the next level. Those words froze my blood. The cardinals listened carefully. Some seemed confused, others seemed to totally agree. However, some could not hide their disappointment, although no one spoke. It was clear that what had been decided behind closed doors was not the message that was now proclaimed. A new era had been declared, but it was not the one promised by Christ. This was a parallel church empty of the cross, full of men and devoid of God. At that moment, I understood that everything I had seen before was now becoming reality. This choice was not the result of prayer but of manipulation. I saw it as if my soul could cross time itself. This man had not arrived guided by the Spirit, but through dark alliances, precise calculations, and elaborate words to please the world, not heaven. There was no longer a need to interpret anything. The truth was right in front of me, clear and indisputable, although few would dare to see it. And, however, I had seen it. I had been sent precisely for this purpose, to tell it. As the vision of the Sistine Chapel faded like fog before a sudden wind, I was pushed to a different time, a dimension that was neither a dream nor a memory but something much more real than the past. I had the clear feeling of being there to witness what had been hidden from the world. It was as if the Spirit was guiding me along a secret timeline, one that only God could reveal. I saw the young cardinal, very young, still a child, with a pure and full look of desire to serve the Lord. I saw his first steps in faith, silent prayers in a small chapel, his emotion before the Eucharist, his sincere love for Jesus. For a moment, I thought that maybe I had judged him wrong. Perhaps he was not the man destined to betray. But the vision opened more, like a